What's up, Internet? My name is Nerdy, and this is a very special episode of Discussing Daggerheart. Because Clarus is not here. We're not on our brand new podcast set. Instead, I'm being joined by an incredible guest who is, I believe, the first published third-party content creator for this system. At least the first to get that coveted Matt Mercer shout-out on the Age of Umbra stream last night when we're recording this, but you'll see it on Tuesday. Ladies and gentlemen, non-binary friends, I'm very excited to welcome in the Cobbmeister himself, Jeremy Cobb. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Honestly, I'm doing better since you just said that we're the first third-party creators for Daggerheart. That had not occurred to me until this moment. Until you said that, I was like, oh, dang. Wow. Oh, wait, I think that's correct. Whoa!
Yeah.
And of course, the Matt Mercer shout out was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming up on the 5th anniversary of Three Black Halflings as a show.
Wow.
And I think if you were to go to us 5 years ago and be like I recently found the very first message, the voice message that Jasper sent to me, and was like, "Hey man, I was just thinking, we talk a lot about D&D and stuff after we play. Do you think maybe we could do like a little discussion thing or something, like videos? I'm not sure if it'd be videos or like a podcast or what." And like, if you were to tell us then, like, hey, in 5 years, Matthew Mercer is going to be shouting out your creation on Critical Role, and you'll have a book that is being kickstarted, is being successfully kickstarted, we would have just been like, what on earth are you, like, that's insane. It's unbelievable. I can't even say it's a dream come true, because I didn't dream of it. I wouldn't have thought that it was feasible to dream about.
Yeah, we had that same moment in and you were on the show when we got the email from the team at Critical Role, and they were like, "Hey, just so you know, Matt is going to mention the charity stream and roleplay relay on tonight's episode of Critical Role, or on the charity event that they did." And I was like, "Oh, right, we're working for you, and like you're going to talk about us." And so we were like,
it's so crazy,
waiting for Critical Role to start to like watch Matthew Mercer say our name. Which was just very cool. Which led to Charity Heart, which is how the first time you and I actually met was live, playing some Daggerheart together. You brought in...
Yeah.
One of the reasons I knew I was going to like you was you played the dumbest character in the way that I like, which isn't to play unaware, but to be... You played very aware in a different way, right? Seeing things in a way that other people don't see them, so your intelligence just seems less than to other people, but it's actually just different. And I thought like the choice that you made with that character was so delightful. If you haven't watched the Gator Polo of Charity Heart, the Gator Polo episode of Charity Heart, you're really missing out. Jeremy Cobb was an excellent addition. And we raised some money playing Daggerheart together, and now you're raising money, not for charity, for yourself. You greedy corporatist. But now...
A horrible sellout I am.
How dare you sell your own system? Tell me about Three Black Halflings and kind of the journey that led you to creating the system.
Oh, absolutely. But first, I also want to say thank you so much for your kind words about my character, Bogart the Frog Apostle. It was so much fun. Genuinely, it was so much fun to get to play with you. And in terms of the subject of this show, that was actually the second event for which I had played Daggerheart. I'd played it in a mini series, I think last year, but I'd never hadn't played it since then. So it was really cool to get to. I think they'd come out with more rules since then and developed the game more since the last time I'd played it. So it was really, really fun to get to play not only the new rules, but also get to play with you as a GM. I thought you did a fantastic job putting that event together and then running the games. So thank you so much.
Of course. I'm going to be hitting you up soon. We're doing a sequel to our charity event last year at the end of this year. So Heroes of Borders 2 is coming. It's going to be even bigger than the last year, so I'll be sending you an email soon.
Ooh, it's not on camera, but I'm rubbing my hands together like a little fly right now. So in terms of Three Black Halflings, so as I mentioned, my friend Jasper and I, my co-host Jasper and I, started the show along with a friend of, I'm not even sure if they were fully friends. I think they just knew each other from drama school, named Unati. Jasper and I had met the year before, in 2019, on a on a play that we were doing called the Butterfly Lion, and I had started DMing D&D the day before we met. And
wow.
I got him into it. Like, I got him in the whole I went basically to the first rehearsal and started proselytizing for TTRPGs and got basically the entire cast into a D&D campaign. And then when the pandemic hit, we picked that back up. And from that, Jasper, who can be very business-minded and very strategic and is a very, very creative guy, was like we were getting so into like TTRPGs and different things. He was going online and like, all right, well, I'm really enjoying this game. What kind of stuff could we make like that has something to do with TTRPGs? And he was looking online and saw that there were almost no black people on like, there were almost, if you typed in the words black D&D, there were almost no videos that came up. I think it was like the Critical Role thing with Terry Crews, and then I think a Key and Peele sketch. Those were like two of the only things that were coming up at that point. And so we were like, hey, what if we talked about diversity and inclusivity in TTRPGs and nerd stuff in general? And we made a podcast about that. And we got together with our now mutual friend Unati, and we were lucky enough to hit in the summer of 2020 when lots and lots of people were very interested in talking about race and racism, and so the show really exploded beyond our wildest dreams or anticipations, and it has led us all the way to today, where I guess to mention how the City of the Black Rose setting came about. That was actually separate from Three Black Halflings. That was the home game that I had started the day before meeting Jasper imploded in late 2020, and we were all really sad about it because one of the players like abruptly quit, and we were all like, oh, and we wanted to start a new campaign. And I was like, okay, what kind of, the first one we did was kind of like generic fantasy setting that I was making up. Let's do something different. What kind of theme would you like? And I threw out a bunch of different ideas, and two of them were gothic horror and noir, and the players were like, let's do those two, and it was like, okay. So I built a setting for them, this megalopolis that I called Mavros, which is the word noir means black in French, and the word Mavros means black in Greek. So I was just looking for other words that meant black that sounded cool, and that's how we ended up with Mavros. But I really, really enjoyed playing in this setting, and after like a few months, I eventually went to Jasper and was like, hey, we should use this for the show if we can. Like, it would be sick. It would be really fun to do. And we eventually came out with a series called City of the Black Rose. The first season was a lot of fun, and then we were like, ooh, we can do it bigger and better. The first season was only 4 episodes. Second season, let's have guest stars. Let's have it more than double the number of episodes, and let's have it just be this huge production. And it took a while to sort of get off the ground, but late last year, around Halloween, actually, we started releasing City of the Black Rose, Herald of Shadows, and that sort of coincided with the build-up towards this Kickstarter that's currently going on for the setting book, because we felt like the setting itself is so rich and has so many opportunities for people to run games in it, for people to take elements from it and use in their games, that all of that, we thought it was just an incredibly fertile ground for that. And so we teamed up with the incredible folks over at Roll and Play Press, and it's just been a wild ride. It's been so much fun getting to like create more material for the book and everything like that, and see what as we hit more stretch goals, what other content is going to be included and what other parts of the world are going to get developed. So yeah, it's been absolutely a blast. And I feel like you asked another question and I accidentally forgot.
No, you're good. I found that fascinating. I am curious. I feel like we're in this sort of very interesting period of I don't even want to call it a renaissance, but this very high period of black art, particularly in the horror genre, right? I think when I think about like the horror movies that Jordan Peele's putting out, Sinners this year, Ryan Coogler's new film. What do you think about your experience as a black man and creating this horror genre? How did you blend those, and what did you find interesting in sort of the tension in like the real world horrors of the last 5 years, and blending that into a TTRPG world to either be escape or to be a commentary on real life events?
So I think in terms of commentary on real life events, a lot of that has been in the themes of like the events of what have happened in the show. it sort of dovetailed with it in some ways. At the end of the second season, there was a major shift in the way that the setting, the city is run. I won't spoil it, but big things happened, and it has left a power vacuum. And in season 3 rather, which we're hoping to do a season 3. The idea is examining like revolutions and what happens in the aftermath of a revolution. What happens when you get rid of tyranny or a tyrannical figure, and now you have to rebuild something and see what you're able to build. One real world theme that got in was definitely policing. If we're talking about like a noir setting, there's always police corruption. You know, the law enforcement is never pure in those settings. But I would say exactly what I was about to say. In real life, I would say in some ways, it's even more toxic, because I think what people don't get into in the history of especially like U.S. law enforcement is its origins from like the slave catching industry, and how policing in America has always been used as a tool to oppress people of color, especially black people. I hope you don't mind a slight historical digression, but this is an important thing that I don't think most Americans know. So, slavery is technically still legal in the United States. The amendment does not state that slavery is illegal. It says it's illegal except in cases of incarceration. If a person has been found to commit a crime, you can legally enslave them in the United States. And when you look at practices that came about during and especially after Reconstruction, where you would have towns, especially in the South, that would come up with completely ridiculous laws to catch out black people with and send them to work camps where they would essentially be enslaved, and the conditions would be horrific. And oftentimes those people would never be able to get out because they would die working in those camps. And those camps continued to exist. Those prison camps existed. People talk about like, oh, slavery ended in 1865. In actuality, those work camps that were openly identified, like the government was like, oh yeah, this is actually a slave camp. The last one, I believe, was closed in like 1963. And even aside from that, the current prison system, which is set up in a way that it drastically, disproportionately targets minorities, especially black people. If a black person and a white person are arrested for the same crime, on average, the black person is going to be convicted at a much higher rate and receive a much more severe sentence for the exact same crime. There's so many different levels to which the structure of America is just built to be racist, and even if a person within that system is not intending to be racist, they are functioning as part of a racist institution. All of that definitely informed the depiction of the world of Mavros. Now, Mavros, I did not really build it to be a racist setting. I didn't want it to be.
Of course, yeah.
But the idea of law enforcement being used to oppress people, and specifically not only that, but just to like even a quote unquote good cop who was within the system is essentially bound by this system that predisposes them to participate in things that are bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen the show The Wire, but even on that show, obviously it's a TV show, but that it was made by people who were either former police officers or who had worked closely with police officers. And even the good cops, for example, in that show will still basically sign off on police brutality. They will participate in police brutality. They will cover up things. It's just part of the institution.
Yeah.
And yes, and that is absolutely part of the world building. And it becomes a pretty major part towards the end of season 2. So that would be one area in which the real world political situation and cultural situations have absolutely influenced the world building of Mavros. But I would say, in terms of points of inspiration, I was mostly drawing because I said gothic horror mostly. It's like mostly gothic horror, early sci-fi, and other things like that. So a lot of it's like British. A lot of it's like H.G. Wells or Bram Stoker, or I don't know, Sheridan Le Fanu, or Robert Louis Stevenson. That's who I'm thinking of. and so on and so forth. It's people like that for the most part, and characters like that. I even draw from like pulp characters. So like the Shadow, who was the inspiration for Batman. I like characters like that to sort of build out the setting. Movies like Metropolis would be another example by Fritz Lang. So it's kind of European in a lot of its inspirations, because that was a lot of the stuff that I grew up watching. Because unfortunately, we didn't really have this black horror boom until about the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I think Get Out came out in 2015. But in terms of looking into like including elements of that has absolutely it's been more of like an individual thing with individual players.
Yeah.
So Unati from Three Black Halflings, they have since left the show back in I think 2021 because they got it roll on Wednesday, the show, and they just are far too big a star for us.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. I think they're a season regular in season 2. Actually, they play Deputy Santiago. They're awesome.
I have not yet seen it, but I'll have to check it out now.
Yeah, but Unati is South African originally, and so in terms of like building out their character, we definitely brought in elements of South African culture. Some of the other people of color who played in the game have brought in elements of their own cultures. I did a sort of a one-shot vignette thing with Connie Chong last year, and made sure to bring in elements of like Chinese mythology and stuff like that, which was really fun. It was fun to see their face light up when I was like, "Oh, this is a Qilin," and they were like, "Oh!" It was really cool. But yeah, I definitely have an eye with world building towards trying to include elements of other cultures when I can, for sure.
So then you had this incredible world that you were building. You have a show going. What was the process of going from we're making an actual play to I think I want to publish this? Like what was the deciding factor in it's a titanic amount of work, like putting together a book like this. It takes so many more people than an actual play does in a lot of ways. There's so many elements. You have an incredible number of different physical goods that can come with your with your purchase, and digital goods, books, enamel pins. Like it's not even just all books, right? There's maps and all sorts of things. So what was the moment where you were like, you know what, I can make this for other people and not just like my game?
A lot of that I have to give credit to Jasper for the inspiration to make it into a book, and the Roll and Play Press folks for actually having the know-how and the resources to be able to make it a book in the first place. If you were to have asked me, do I think that this should be a public setting? I'm like, well, I don't know. I just made it for my friends, and I think it's fun to play in, but I don't know about that. But Jasper was like, no, this is a really, really, really cool setting, and I think that I believe in you, and I think that your work should be seen by people, and people should play in this. And I was like, okay. And we had sort of struck up a friendship last year with Roll and Play Press, incredible UK book publishers. In fact, weren't they involved in the charity drive that we were doing?
They were sponsors on Charity Heart.
Yeah. They're incredible, and we had them on our show. We were like, these people are awesome. And when I think Jasper was talking to them, they were like talking about the possibility of wanting to publish like an original setting, and Jasper was like, I happen to know of one that may be to your liking. And they were like, yes! And so that has been, it is 100% true. As difficult as making an actual play can be, it is nothing compared to the amount of time and effort that goes into creating a book. You have all the artists, you have publishers, you have to get the materials from places. It's incredible. Even just leading up to the Kickstarter has been nuts, the amount of work that it's been.
One of the things that's always shocked me about books, and I've only ever worked like tangentially on the edges of their production, is just the amount of effort that just goes into like typesetting and layout. Like just because every time you move one thing, it moves 75 things. Just the physical location of things on the page. It really is. The people who are really good at it have a skill set that like an understanding of geometry I will never be able to comprehend.
It's so complicated.
Yeah. So your Kickstarter is now live. Obviously, everywhere we post this interview, podcast, or video, the link to that will be available. It is City of the Black Rose. And so if you're anywhere on the Kickstarter pages, hit that search, City of the Black Rose. I have my copy coming. I'm very excited. I got in that Kickstarter day one.
Thank you.
So your system like I said at the beginning, is one of the first, and this is discussing Daggerheart, so I do want to get to the Daggerheart of it all. Your system is one of the first I've seen to be explicitly Daggerheart and 5e compatible. And I have a bunch of questions about that. Sorry. Your system predates Daggerheart, right? But by a significant amount, by a few years. When you started to build the book, were you initially planning on making it 5e and Daggerheart a simultaneous launch of both at the same time, or did the Daggerheart of it all come in at a later date at some point?
So my initial intention was always to make it compatible with all fantasy RPGs, because I feel like the setting itself can lend itself to pretty much whatever. It may have been created as a D&D setting, but there's nothing about it that needs to be in D&D. And that's actually, we've done a series of videos that I made sort of narrating what it might look like to play it in other systems like Call of Cthulhu or Vampire the Masquerade or Thirsty Sword Lesbians. I did one for Kids on Bikes that I don't think is out yet, or Daggerheart, including Daggerheart. But the Daggerheart thing just sort of dovetailed because as we were moving towards doing the Kickstarter, Critical Role was also moving towards publishing Daggerheart as a system, and we were like, hey, let's jump in together and we can scratch each other's backs. And so we're like, I've played Daggerheart. I think it's a very, very fun system. I think that it works very well with this. I've actually run a 2-shot that will be coming out, I think, here in the next few weeks. Ooh. In Daggerheart, or using Daggerheart in the City of the Black Rose, which is really, really fun. And the Hope and Fear system, I think, worked very well with the idea, the noir themes of fatalism and the dark edge to things. The idea that you can succeed, but it's in a way that you didn't like. Works perfectly with the noir genre. Fatalism is for anyone who's not familiar, the idea that no matter what you do, fate is already predetermined. There wasn't really anything you could have done to make things that much better. And it's a major theme in noir fiction that you can only really improve the world so much before you also get cut down. And so while you can also roll with hope, and I think it's wonderful when you do. I think it becomes more wonderful in a setting where so much of it is when you finally have a success with hope, you're like, yeah, and it feels even better because of the contrast that it creates.
Well, I think, I think in Matt's just the first episode of Age of Umbra last night, I think he really put on a showcase that Daggerheart can be used for horror very effectively. And I think that particularly one of the things I love that he did, because it's a video actual play, but this would be for people at tables, having the mechanic of fear be this visual element for the players where he's just moving a little bead across a slider. That little abacus moment, the players in that situation get to see this accumulation of despair in front of them. And just really showed, I think Age of Umbra almost is a proof of concept that horror works here. City of the Black Rose, it's coming, man. You know what I mean? Promoting this Kickstarter on that show of all of their shows, I think was definitely a level of synergy that is beautiful to see.
Absolutely. And for me, I 100% agree. And I think that was a brilliant move because it adds a visual element of tension for the players. I think, for me, like I said, I wanted this to be a system agnostic setting because for me, the story that you tell does not need to be tied to a rule set. It's like you can... I came up watching Dimension 20. That was my first real actual play that I got into. And the first season of that was Fantasy High. It's in an American high school, which is... I was aware of D&D, and my understanding of it was that it was supposed to be medieval, vaguely European fantasy. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so you can just do whatever you want with this. That was my mindset. And I really gravitate more towards systems where you kind of can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't have to have one specific kind of story that you're telling, or even one specific narrative. There are some games that have a specific storyline built into them that can be really fun, but I tend to prefer stuff that's more open. And so I think with this setting in particular, and with Daggerheart, or with this system in general, and with Daggerheart in particular, I think it can really, it's just a matter of how you employ the pieces that are already there in the setting to enhance the way that you're already running your system. So in the case of Daggerheart, I absolutely think that the fear and the hope mechanics work really, really well. I think also the idea of your background coming into play. I think if you're in a huge urban area, a lot of times what neighborhood you're from or what part of the city you're from really really matters. And so having your background location factor into your character, like on kind of a mechanical level, is really, really cool. I really enjoy that. I enjoy how much more loose Daggerheart is with the specifics of how like magic and some other things work. So you can get a lot more loosey-goosey and broad and flavorful. So it makes it actually in some ways easier to use for a more modern setting, something that's like 19th century, early 20th century, because you could just be like, sure, it's a gun. You could, like you can just flavor it in various ways. It makes it really easy to use.
I was interviewing Spencer and Rowan at the Critical Role office in February. We did like a live, and one of the things that I mentioned on that video was that the cards are effects. They're not spell components. They're, you know what I mean? It's not, this is how the spell works. It's, this is what this power does. And I know that with D&D you can do that, but I do find when I am teaching new people to play Dungeons and Dragons, there is an element of, because they've read it, they absorb that into the game. Like oh, but, well, no, I need my character needs to have a way to carry all this wax around so I can cast, fireball or whatever. And there's just something about the cards in Daggerheart not being specifically tied to how your character is supposed to do this, but just that they can, that really opens up the imagination for me in terms of your character gets stronger for 2 minutes. What does that look like for your character? The card doesn't tell you, right? And that to me is a really cool imagination opening value that this system has. Especially for something like this where, you might not want to have sort of the traditional swords and sorcery magic in Mavros. What does your character's impact on this world look like, knowing that the end effect is this? It's a really, it's a cool way to use the system.
Yeah, you're not having to fight against the system in order to make it work with the world that you're trying to create, which is the criticism that a lot of people will have for D&D if they're trying to use it in a different kind of setting other than medieval fantasy European, which is, I think, with this, it is absolutely a lot easier, 100%. So I think... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Well, my follow-up to that is, so at what point in the process did you add in the thinking about Daggerheart of it all? And what was the workload like? Well, how did that change the process of creating the book? Was it more just like ancillary things that was added at the end, or did it make you have to kind of reframe the language you were using throughout the book?
So the Roll and Play Press folks are really, really good at if you look at any of their past books, they've done a really good job of creating stuff that can be used for a variety of different systems. That was actually another thing that really attracted me to them as people to work with for this. Their One Shot Wonders book, for example, is, I believe, meant to be system agnostic. And if you look at it, I don't believe there are any specific, I don't think any of the stat blocks in there are very system specific, which makes them very easy to translate to other games. And I think the goal is to try and not tie everything magically even. I think what it would probably shift is there are specific spells that exist in D&D, and so if those spells exist, and you're thinking of building a world out of that, then you think, how can I employ those spells in this world? So for example, early on, the idea of the police having a zone of truth room that they would bring you into for interrogations, and they would know if you had passed it, if you'd succeeded on the save, and they would beat it out of you until you failed, right? And so you have to tell them the truth. That is something that exists in D&D, whereas a zone of truth spell or equivalent does not necessarily exist in every single game. And so I think changes like that, and trying to become more broad and not using specific spell names. Definitely, I renamed some things that I had just kind of used some D&D names for some spells, or not some spells, from some locations. So there was a storyline that took place in the Shadowfell in my home game, and I wanted to incorporate a sort of purgatorial plane into the show, and I'm like, oh, in the run-up to the book, I don't want to tie us to the Forgotten Realms, so I'll come up with a new name for this, and that will then sort of free us to come up with more things that may feel very reminiscent of the Shadowfell, but it is its own thing. So we called it the Gloaming. Same thing with the Feywild. I didn't want it to. Mavros has a strong Fey association in its history, and so I didn't want to just be like Forgotten Realms. So we renamed that and sort of came up with our own version of the Feywild called the Rhapsodian Isles, or the Rhapsodies, and so on and so forth. So a lot of it's been like renaming and reframing. Brennan's character from the very first scene of our AP show is a Leonin, mechanically in D&D, but in most of the promotional materials we call him a Lionfolk now, to try and make it more easy for people to be like, oh yes, okay, he's just a walking, talking lion man. I only play Call of Cthulhu, and I'm cool with having animals.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I wanted to be something like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's been in the language, and then in how we try and approach the magic. I think trying to be less specific about what spells are empowering which things, and trying to be more open about it, and just saying, hey, we can, because one of the major themes of Mavros is that, similar to the scientific revolution that the Western world was undergoing in the 19th century, it's undergoing sort of a magitech boom, where arcanists are making all of these incredible discoveries, and there was one arcanist in particular who figured out how to use this magic ore that is found in Mavros, called Delphic ore, and basically implant spells into it. And spells in this context would be magic that is acting according to your intentions. So you can implant a spell into this and into this ore, and work the ore into the design of whatever you're creating, and now you have a magic device that will hold that charge for a long time, and it's a lot faster and cheaper and more stable. And so the society's being revolutionized.
Yeah.
You now have lighters, just producing magical little flames. You have levitators. Your escalators could just literally float. There are teleportation circles around the city that if you're rich enough, you can pay to just teleport from place to place instead of having to walk. Resurrection has become a lot more commonplace, but this was something that was kind of informed by the D&D aspect of the world building, but I think works very well across the board, because one of the major themes of the setting is economic inequality. It costs money to do a lot of this stuff, and so there are rich people who can afford to die and get resurrected multiple times. Some of them so much so that murder is actually more of a deterrent than it is an ender. Like, I kill you knowing you'll come back, and I'm just letting you know next time I'll do something even worse. I'm sending you a message by killing you. Whereas if you're a poor person, you don't have access to this. You don't have access to magical healing. You don't have access to resurrections. So death for you is final, and that's actually one of the themes that gets brought up in our upcoming two-shot. But the idea of, like, death almost becomes meaningless past a certain income bracket, and that's something that I think was influenced by the D&D world building, but is broad enough that it's able to apply to just about any system.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would say that's been a lot of it.
So I guess my main Daggerheart related question in this particular case is, how do you take something like a spell from D&D and slot that over to Daggerheart? What is the mental process, I guess, that you go through to make sure that you're creating something that is going to fit over here, but also doesn't warp it so much that it doesn't fit in the first place?
I think a couple of the major differences between D&D and Daggerheart is that D&D is very, very specific, which, as we've said, can sometimes feel a little bit constraining. So I think the goal is to focus on what are you trying to accomplish with a given power or a given ability, and how would that look in this particular system? So Daggerheart is a lot more open. It'll be the domains will often just be like, yeah, you managed to restrain somebody using like your nature powers, and you get to then choose how you flavor that, and you can pretty drastically reflavor stuff. Whether it's like you're summoning roots from the ground that grab people, or you just have a lasso that you throw, or some other thing. Maybe you're locking up. Maybe you're giving them visions of trees in their mind and locking up their body that way. There's so many different ways to do it. And so a lot of it has been just a process of like taking specific character stuff and just converting it. When we were doing our Daggerheart 2-shot, we had two PCs who had previously been in D&D. We had, in D&D, they had been a elf, Shadar Kai specifically, shadow sorcerer.
Okay.
And I think grave domain cleric who was vaguely infernal, but he was not a tiefling. I think mechanically he was just vaguely infernal. Oh,
infernal.
And both
I heard vaguely
did you say
infernal. And I was like, is that important to the system? Is that...
Nah. No, he's very fertile. He has 13 terrible sons. Canonically, he's very, very fertile.
Okay. But also infernal.
Yes, he's infernal. I think both characters, obviously in the case of Sorcerer, Daggerheart has its own version of the Sorcerer, so that conversion process was pretty easy. It was basically just looking at what does being a Sorcerer mean.
Yeah.
Oh, your magic comes from within you? Great, cool. That's still the same. Now we're going over here. You're an elf who was like associated with death. Cool. How do you like? What is your version of what that looks like? So I didn't even really go in deep with it. I think all of the characters ended up creating all of the players rather created their own characters pretty independently of me, and they all I think ended up being mixed ancestry. I think it was like elf with like one piece from elf, one piece from something else, one piece from like Infernus, one piece from something else. I think one person was a human simia dual ancestry, and another person I think it was some kind of like elf and orc combination. I can't remember though. But like everybody was taking, which by the way, shout out to Daggerheart for solving the problem that D&D has just been unable to solve for some reason for who knows how long, of having mixed ancestries that people are like, oh, that's good. Like no one looks at this and says, what is this? It's like, oh, you just take one trait from one and one trait from the other, and you have to make sure one's from the top, one's from the bottom. Awesome. That's it.
Well,
great. And you
just,
make them look however you want.
It's always the hilarious thing of like half orc. And I'm like, that person has another half. Like half orcs in D&D are a race, but they're not half orc. They're half orcs. You know what I mean? There's that weird element of it where it's always been so funny to me that you can't play an orc, but you can play a half orc, but the game never acknowledges what your other half is. It's only that you're half orc. And
well, canonically, you're supposed to be human, I think, is the idea.
Well, and canonically, you're supposed to have come from a sexual relationship of violence. So it's like...
Yes,
there's that weird element of it where they're like, you're definitely the progeny of a lack of consent is such a strange, like, mechanic thing that we still have in the 2024 rules. Like, this isn't even, like, gone, weirdly.
I think that the idea, if I can get on my racial soapbox here for a second, I think that actually is a symptom of it. I think that's a sign of who was creating it. Not that I'm saying like these people are a bunch of monsters. I think in America though, if you look at how especially America looks at mixed race people, if you are mixed race black, you are defined usually as black, but like lighter skinned. In America, in other places, people will just say you're mixed. Which it varies from location to location.
Unfortunately, has push and pull from both directions, right? Like, you know, there really is the like, because I grew up in the whitest part of Canada. I grew up on like outside of a city in like a you know, farm town. And so when I moved to New York City at 18, and I was like, I knew one black person in high school because he was the only black person in my high school. And so I was like, what do you mean colorism? What is happening? And I just didn't have any. Now, obviously, you know, I've been around it enough. I have some understanding of it, and I'm able to be empathetic towards it. But towards both sides of it, right? But yeah, there was definitely a culture shock moment of people being like, oh no, like they're not really black enough, and me being like, I don't know what that means. That feels very mean. Like that feels very. I feel like you're bullying them, but it wasn't. It was like this honest. There is a relationship there that is hard to understand if you're outside of it, right?
Well, and I think part of the reason that D&D uses the minority group to define what you are is very much based in that idea that, oh, if you're mixed, you are not pure. In like that's a very American concept of like if you have a little bit in you, then you automatically are this. It's the one drop rule that they used to use in the United States, where if you have any black ancestry, you're black. If you have any orc ancestry, you have to be defined by your half orcness. You can't be half orc, half this. You're just half orc.
And then Daggerheart's
that's
like,
what you are.
You have two powers. One of them comes from one of them comes from the other. That's it.
Exactly. I think they do a great job with that. And I think also when it comes to specific enemies and stuff like that, a lot of that is also reflavoring. I think, again, because of... I like that the adversaries will have specific flavor text, but it's not so specific that you're like, oh, great, I'm bound to this. You look at it and be like, ooh, intriguing. But then you look at their abilities and you say, okay, I can reflavor this. I actually did this in our recent Daggerheart 2-shot, where I was using, I think, an undead. It was one of the more powerful... Actually, no, it wasn't even even undead. It was a demon. It was like a demon stat block for a humanoid person, for basically a person who could extrude his own nervous system and stab people with it. His name was Synapse, so he could like have his nerves like come out of his ear or different parts of his body.
Yeah, I hate that.
He'd like drilled holes in his teeth so he could do it out of his teeth as well. And he could pull them out, and he stabbed through his character's foot. It's crazy. It's a horror show. But it's I was able. There is no stat block for that exact person in Daggerheart, but I was very easily able to take what they had and say, cool, this is about as strong as I need it to be, and it has abilities that I can just heavily reflavor to be like, oh yes, this is magical damage that's being done to you, and this is also physical damage. I also really appreciate the dichotomy of just magical and physical damage, rather than having to look up however many different damage types that barely even come into play half the time. It's very nice to just have it be that simple.
Well, and thunder damage just being sound.
Yeah.
I love playing Dungeons and Dragons. I love it so much. I hate trying to make it make sense for myself. I play D&D in a way where I like keep it at arm's length, and it's there because it is bringing me joy, but it's over there. It's not here because I can't like get into it. But no, now that we have Daggerheart, who knows? Yeah, it's so exciting. I think that I think that you're one of those channels that, Clarissa and I look to for kind of because we're 2.5 years into this, we've been making content since 2020, but we only started doing TTRPG content in the middle of 2023. And some of you're kind of doing that next step of how do I take this show and make something that I can put out in the world that can not just have my game, but also be part of other games. When you think about Mavros and you think about the City of the Black Rose, now that you put out this book, there's a good chance that someone is going to do an AP in your world. There's a good chance you're going to start seeing that. What excites you about that? What worries you about that? And what advice would you give to the GMs running the games in your world once they have this book in their hands?
Ooh. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate that. And secondly, I'm really excited. I think my biggest fear is I hope people enjoy it. I hope when they get the book, I hope they look at it and they're like, oh, this is really cool. I want to run games in this, or I want to take this and that and the other and use it for my game that's already in another setting. Mm-hmm. I really hope that it's useful for people. So I hope people do APs in it. Not just so I can be like, oh, that's so cool, but so they can have fun with it, because it's been so much fun for us. I would say my other, I don't know that I really have fears beyond that, because once you put it out there, the setting, sure, I may be the one creating the canon setting, but whoever has it in their game doesn't have to play it the way that I came up with it. If you don't like the names of the places we came up with, or some of the NPCs, if you look at the Daggerheart stat blocks and you're like, I don't like this monster, could be stronger, and you want to create a more powerful adversary, please do. Yeah, absolutely.
I would be, and this is just me, the actor in me, who's I've done readings and workshops, and I'm I can't go see the next workshop because they might do it better than me. I am fully. And this, I'm not trying to put this on your all. There is a part of me as a person that would go, I don't want to know if they did it better than I did.
Part of me, yeah, but I think part of me is if they did it better, maybe I can take some of their ideas. They're already using mine. I feel like it's only fair.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I would say, as with any horror game, because two things. Number one, as with any game that has strong elements of horror, it is very, very important. Any game, period, but especially a game that has elements of horror, it's very, very important to talk to your players ahead of time, make sure everybody's invested. Because horror is something that works better, that really only works at a TTRPG game if everybody is on board with that. Yeah. If one person is refusing to invest in the horror, or if you're including things that people are really uncomfortable with, and you have not done a session zero and talked about lines and veils or different boundaries and things that people might not be comfortable with having in a game, certain phobias or anything, or certain traumas that people may have. These are all very, very, very important conversations to have up front, because the goal is for everybody to have fun. So absolutely talk to your whole group, make sure everybody's on board. The other thing I would say is this. Mavros is intended to be not exclusively horror. It is meant to be silly at times. There's some very, very silly things. There's, for example, there is in our, I don't think we can go into much detail about it, but in our series, City of the Black Rose, Herald of Shadows, the players come into contact with an organization of basically librarian ninjas, who call themselves the Paper Cuts. They are an activist group who's actively advocating for like greater education and specifically for the working class and more opportunities, and trying to advocate for change in the city. One piece of lore that we did not get into is that their arch enemy is a shadowy figure known as the Illiterator. They don't tell anybody this because no one believes them, because that is the stupidest name anyone has ever heard. And it appears the Illiterator specifically chose that name because they knew no one would believe that they existed. In our most recent thing, there was, in our two-shot, we meet a person from the Mavros Comestibles Research and Investigation Bureau, or McRib for short. The goal is for you to be able to accommodate a range of tones. You can also have a love story. You can have a tragedy. You could do a game in Mavros and have minimal or even no horror. It can just be like a crime drama. It could be a romance, because the city incorporates strong elements of like Art Nouveau and Art Deco and Gothic architecture and different things like that. It's meant to be beautiful. At the same time, it's meant to be able to tell a range of stories. It's just that the baseline that I was going from happened to be horror, and there's a lot of stuff in it that is horrifying. But if you are like, hey, I really like this particular NPC who has nothing to do with horror, or I like this aspect of it and I want to use this and I don't want to do a horror game, or if you just want to run a game in Mavros and you don't want it to get you don't want it to feel samey, I absolutely strongly suggest having moments where people can go, wow, this is really nice. Because even in it's very much the setting is very much inspired by my own experience living in cities, and as rough as it can be sometimes living in a massive city, it's also like really pretty sometimes. I lived in London for 8 years, and there would be sometimes when I'm like, oh, it's so dreary and it's raining all the time and nobody cares about each other and it's just really sad and all this stuff. And then like I walk to one part of it, I look around, I'm like, this is like gorgeous. This was built hundreds of years ago and it's still here. And like the people who built it are all gone, but the thing that they made is like echoing their beauty centuries later, and I'm getting to experience that. And also the fact, the idea of being a part of a city is, even though people can sometimes feel very alone in a city, it is an ecosystem. Every single person in that city is part of a community, whether they realize it or not. And everything that you do is going to, in some small way, impact everybody else. Even if you don't realize it, even if they don't realize it. And so I think that it's important to recognize to highlight the beauty and the fun of being in a city like that. Nightclubs, jazz, music, festivals, like food. These are all really fun parts of being in a city. So I want to urge people to, if you're interested, absolutely incorporate the more wild and wacky and wonderful and sweet and beautiful parts of the setting as well. Don't just focus in on the horror and the depression of it all, because honestly, if you do all of that stuff, the scary stuff is going to hit a heck of a lot harder.
This reminds me of this wild story. I was working on this movie a decade ago now that you can't watch. It never came out. Called Gods Behaving Badly. They showed it at like a Roman film festival one time, and it was so bad that they scrapped it. But the cast was amazing. It was like Sharon Stone, Edie Falco, Oliver Platt.
Wow.
And we were shooting these 10 straight overnights at the Botanical Gardens in Staten Island. And we were all fucking miserable. It was cold and wet. It was like night 6 or something. And I just remember I was sitting at a table with Christopher Walken and John Turturro. And we were having a conversation about the Bronx Zoo. And I was like, I've never been. And these two men just like laid into me about how great the Bronx Zoo was. And I was like, it was just this weird moment when we were all just kind of like eating our cold sandwiches at 3:00 in the morning, shooting this scene where it was so hot, but the sun was out. So we were all freezing to death. So we all had to like cover up in blankets for shots. Just a miserable shoot. But we were just chuckling about this fucking moment, you know what I mean, about this zoo that was in another borough, just having that kind of connection around this city that we all had some kind of relationship to. And I was like, oh yeah, even in that like moment where like we were all having a bad time, there is that, right? And I think TTRPGs are so good about bringing that out of people, the collaboration You said earlier, like, Jasper was such an inspiration in you pushing to get this book made. Like, there is something about the art form of TTRPGs and actual plays, and whether you're playing for an audience or just playing with your friends at home, there's something so community based about this in particular. You can't take the community out of what this is. I love it so much. I love what you guys are doing. I think that you guys are such an important voice in terms of making sure that there are people seeing people who are not maybe my skin tone, and doing this hobby and really succeeding in this hobby and growing an incredible company, doing incredible things. Jeremy, it is always such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm such a big fan of yours, everything that you do. I was so excited to get to play with you earlier this year. Just know that if I do ever play Mavros, I will be a paper cut because I want to be a ninja librarian so much. Yes! Where can people find you? What's the status of the Kickstarter? Let people know all the important details.
Okay. You can find me at Jeremy Cobb 1. That's Cobb with 2 B's, the number 1, on Blue Sky and Twitter. I'm trying to use Blue Sky more and more and more. Mm-hmm. You can also find me on Instagram at the Cobbmeister. And of course, if you want to hear even more details about Mavros and you want to hear the setting in action, you can go check out 3 Black Halflings. We're a podcast available wherever pods are cast. We've done multiple discussion episodes with just the Halflings and also with the folks from Roll and Play Press talking about even more specifics of the lore, the setting. If you want to hear the setting in action, you can hear our series City of the Black Rose. We did season 1, which is 4 episodes long, and then season 2, City of the Black Rose Herald of Shadows, which is 10 episodes long and has a cavalcade of guest stars, including Brennan Lee Mulligan, Abubakar Salim, Josephine McAdam, Mark Meir. We had some really incredible people take part in that one, and it's a bundle of laughs and fear. And Caldwell Tanner actually is part of the cast of that one. From NADPOD.
I love those NADPOD peeps.
Yeah, and I would say that would be an example of the humor. Caldwell every time I talk about this dude, I have to, if I was wearing a hat, I'd have to tip it to him because he does such a good job of working in his humor into the world so that it feels like it's part of the world rather than sticking out. It feels like, yeah, this is just the sillier part of it. Wonderful. But you can check out all those places, and then the Kickstarter itself. You can find us, as Nerdy said, on Kickstarter.com. You could look up City of the Black Rose, or you can Google City of the Black Rose Kickstarter. We are currently, as of this recording, we're closing in on our 3rd stretch goal. I'm going to scroll down for the specifics of the stretch goals real quick, just so I don't get anything wrong. Our first stretch goal was to add 10 enemies and adversaries with full monster stat blocks for 5e and Daggerheart, which I'm going to be spearheading, which is a lot of fun. I haven't done nearly as much homebrewing for Daggerheart yet, so it's really fun to sort of it seems, I will be honest, from having run it seems like their monsters or their adversaries rather are better. The CR is a lot more accurate than especially with 2014 5e. Yeah. From what I've seen, it seems like they did a really good job of calibrating those adversaries. So I'm hoping that I can get on their level for this, and I have some really, really fun ideas there. Our second one that we did was an expansion to another part of Mavros, the city-state. It's outside of the city. It's the boonies area, very rural, a lot of like folk horror and Southern Gothic. So if you like that kind of stuff, we just hit that, and we're now closing in on, I think we're less than 3,000 pounds away from having environment stats. There will be an environment PDF with 10 locations that will include Daggerheart stat blocks and 5e lair actions. And I'm also heading that one up. So if you've ever wanted to have a battle on the roof of a Gothic church in the rain, or atop a runaway tram that's zooming through the sky of the city, or in some haunted maze of catacombs in an ossuary, or in a jazz club where the jazz band, the incredible music that the jazz band is laying down is giving you various buffs or debuffs as things go along. This is absolutely the stretch goal for you. We have more stretch goals coming up, including a couple, hopefully, that will include more AP content. With some incredible guest stars that I can't say just yet, but it's gonna be really, really cool. So yeah, this is I think as of the recording, I think we have 26 days left in the campaign.
Let's go.
It ends on Yeah, it ends on Thursday, June 26th at 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So, whew, but it's been a rush. It's been an incredible rush and an incredible experience over these past few days. And thank you so much for having me on. I love getting to talk about this setting, and it's just so exciting.
Of course, man.
And also, I do want to say also thank you so much to every single person who has already backed us or shared it in any way, and to anyone who does back it or share the project. Our show would not exist without people listening to and sharing our stuff, and we would not be able to make this book without you. So thank you ever so much from the bottom of my heart. This is unbelievable. Again, I can't even say it's a dream come true because I never even dreamed of it. I didn't even dream that it could be possible. It was beyond my wildest dreams. So thank you all so much.
Jeremy, as always, incredible. Big fan of everything that you're doing and the example that you set and the path that you lay behind you for other people to hopefully make their own third-party Daggerheart content. I've got a campaign frame that I've been tooling with that we're going to show off in an upcoming actual play this summer that I'm very excited for. And so, I just really cool. I'm so happy to see it funded and you already succeeding. But the thing about Kickstarter is that funding is just the first step. It's really about the stretch goals. And as someone who thinks the environmental stat blocks is one of my favorite things about Daggerheart, I hope you get there because I hope to get that in the package that I paid for. If you want to follow me around the internet, you can. I am at Nerdy Nightly. Make sure you're following 3 Black Halflings everywhere. Clarus will be back next week for another very special episode of Discussing Daggerheart. There will be another guest. We will be recording from a work trip. Definitely check out Discussing Daggerheart next week. It's going to be very cool. We have a fun little idea. Going back to the last week in Session Zeros, we're going to be exploring how to do a Session Zero with special guests. So I can't wait for you to see that. But until next time, as we always say around these parts, do something nerdy tonight. Bye.